Hi everyone, welcome to Control Alt and Compete. Today we're joined by Greg Lee from Team Terrible. Greg, how are you?
I'm not too bad. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be down in Edinburgh because I don't get a chance to visit down here as much as I used to.
You're not just at Dundee, you're based fully then?
Yeah, we have an office up in Dundee and that's where I went to university when I first came over to Scotland, but I've been up there ever since, and there's like a really, really good gaming community up there. There's a lot of like small studios and stuff, so it kind of felt at home and it sort of made sense to form the studio there.
And how long have you been there then?
I'm going to show my age now. It must be about 16 or 17 years. It's been a long time. Like I came over here when I was 19 or 20, so it's been a while now. Like,
do you know what? I'll probably ask you later on, but I'll just ask you now anyway. How do you think it's developed then from when you first came to what it's like now, the scene in Dundee?
Well, it was very strange. One of the big sort of turning points, I think, was the formation and then the ending of like Real-Time Worlds, because obviously it was like the biggest studio in Dundee for a very, very long time. But how that changed, obviously there was stuff before then, there was like DMA and stuff, but that's before my time. But sort of out of the ashes of Real-Time Worlds came a bunch of other studios. So there was Ruffian, which I worked in for a while. But there's been some other really big games up there, like Ninja Kiwi with Balloons, 4J with Minecraft. Rockstar have now started making waves up there with their new studio opening. There's a lot of really exciting opportunity, and that's not even counting a ton of other smaller studios that are also making really cool content.
It's actually interesting the fact that Real-Time collapsing just spawned all these guys and girls that never had jobs to go away and just think, I can do that and create a game, right? Oh,
absolutely. It ended up, there's tons of people who worked there, went over and just set up their own studios or explore new ventures. But it was quite a big studio at the time. In fact, whenever I was at university, I think it was around third year when that studio closed. And there was a bit of a panic moment for me where that was like the big place where you went, like a certain percentage of Abertay students would get hired by Real-Time. And then the next year we had like X Real-Time people teaching, so I was like, well, that's not a good sign, you know. All them are now out of work. But like I said, from the ashes of that, there's been some really, really cool studios have formed.
Yeah, I want to dig back to like your childhood then, right? So what got you into gaming? Were you a big gamer growing up, or did you pivot? Like,
I always enjoyed, a lot of it comes from my dad. Like I always enjoyed games, but I don't necessarily mean that like video games. There was always like a common thing, like around the dinner table, like playing stupid word games or just weird games that my dad came up with.
Like so what?
We used to do like really dumb ones of like, we have this stupid one called the ABC game, and it'll be like countries, and you basically have to, everyone has to name a country beginning with the letter A, then the letter B, then the C. Just stupid stuff just like that.
Gamifying everything.
Basically,
I do that with my kids. I always think when I hear that back, I think, I wonder what they'll say when they grow up. But yeah, I get it.
I always just enjoyed that. It was just, like I said, it's gamifying, it's just putting a bit of fun on things. And then as I got a bit older, obviously it was in the sports, it was in the board games and stuff, but then video games were sort of like in their infancy back then, and there was definitely a thing where, I think the first ever console I had was an Amiga. Now, we had like a second-hand Amiga. It wasn't, like I wasn't quite old enough to be there when it first came out.
What Amiga are you talking then?
I have no idea. I just knew it as the Amiga.
Was it a cassette-based one? Or
no, I had floppy disks. I don't know which one that is.
Yeah. Right.
And then that moved on to like SNES, you know, then there's on to like GameCube, PlayStation, a whole bunch of stuff from there. But it was also a big social thing for me. Like to me, a lot of the time, that's how I spent time with my friends was, let's go around to this person's house because they've got a new game.
Play Mario Kart.
Yeah, exactly. And as well as back then, because games were a lot less accessible, you couldn't download them, so you either had to rent or buy them. And obviously we were all kids, so we had no disposable income. So if someone got a new game, that was like the talk of the summer of like, someone's got Metal Gear Solid, we need to go around there and I need to see what this game is like.
I got an American version of Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and I got the adapter as well, and I think this was like the holy grail at the school. I think everyone was talking about it, and we was all going around people's houses and playing it. But
yeah, I remember doing that with like the multi-tap on the PlayStation, where you could plug in 4 controllers. In fact, that's actually one of the reasons that I got into like doing game design. Was I used to spend a lot of time like making maps for my friends to play. Oh, cool. So things like Age of Empires, Time Splitters was a big one where we had 2 TVs set up, and you would have like up to 8 players, and I would invent these game modes of like Team A has to do this, Team B has to do this, which is like, I didn't realize it at the time, but that is what game development is. It's just, we didn't have the rules enforced programmatically. It was like playing a board game. Like, here's the rules, you're not allowed to pick up this gun, you're not allowed to do this. But that is just game design. So that was kind of how it started, I guess, as far as like me getting involved in game development. I just didn't realize it at the time. I was just having fun.
That's so cool. But it just seems like even from your dad, like when you're younger to that, it's just teed you up for where you are now, though, right?
Yeah, it's that thing of like, you can make anything fun with enough like panache and with like friends, like, you know, throwing balled up pieces of paper into a bin is fun if there's 3 or 4 of your mates and you just make it fun. You know, you can gamify pretty much everything. It's just sort of the equivalent of like the modern day, like, you know, what polishes, making things feel good can be a very simple interaction, but yeah, it can totally be an enjoyable thing that you can make like a bit of a ceremony if you win and stuff. So yeah.
Absolutely, we were creating games. We got stuck in a lift a couple of months ago, and we all started making games and having fun, just silly wee games like putting a penny into someone's hand and trying to catch it. But yeah, you can gamify anything.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it's I think it's just like a human nature thing. It's like inventing stories, inventing games while you're doing stuff. It's a good way to pass time. It's a good way to like socialize.
And so how then did you take that from, just having fun with your friends and thinking maybe I could do this as a career? How did that come up?
Oh, I genuinely didn't realize it was going to be a career. So in Northern Ireland at the time, there was no games industry, or at least that I was aware of. There is now like a couple of cool studios that are set up there, but like back then, as far as I was concerned, games were something that were made in America. Like I had no chance to do that, so I didn't do that. I went to university for a completely different degree, dropped out, hated it.
What did you go for?
I was doing biological sciences. It was awful. I was just sitting wearing a lab coat in a thing, just miserable. So I left after 3 months because I was like, this isn't me. I actually worked in game, like the retail store.
All right, cool. Yeah. But it's shut down now.
Is it?
Yeah, I went to town on Saturday, and it was, you always just go in for a wee nosy, but no, it's gone.
I did hear a rumor that it was going into administration, but I didn't know if it had actually closed down or not. Like so, But at that time, because I dropped out of uni, I was like the only member of staff that like had unlimited free time. All the rest of them were like students and stuff. So I ended up like accidentally becoming like a deputy manager. And there was a guy I was working with who was a student, and he was going to Scotland to study video game design. And I basically thought, I'm doing nothing else with my life. Screw it, cool. I'll go do that. Yeah, it was literally that, and then came over to Scotland and then suddenly realised, no, you can do this. This is a viable career option. I just was never told that whenever I was younger. But like I said, I don't think the...
Bricky joiner.
Basically, that's it. Like, do you want to be a doctor or whatever? That all made sense. Whereas, I think now it's different, but back then, particularly in Northern Ireland, there just was no career path to do that kind of thing.
That's really cool. And then, so how did you then suddenly come to, I've had a look at your CV, you've worked at Rockstar. Tell us about some of your career paths that maybe led you to where you are today again.
Well, the first thing I did when I left uni was I actually formed a company, which we ran into the ground quite quickly because we didn't really know what we were doing. I think a lot of people, the industry is quite rough, like quite harsh. It's difficult to get a job, it's difficult to get your foot in the door. It's quite brutal, studios close. So we just thought, well, we'll do our own thing. We were a bit ideological, like we'll just make a game and we'll make money, but there's a lot more to it than that, which I learned all those lessons the hard way. And then from there I worked in a variety of different studios. One of the biggest ones I was working on was Crackdown 3. I worked on that for a couple of years, and then that studio got bought over by Rockstar, so I was working on a couple of Rockstar products, and then that led to me and the co-founder of my studio. We were just constantly working on side projects because we loved doing our own stuff. And one of them blew up, so it was kind of like this makes sense, we should just jump ship. And we were the same people that we'd formed the company when we came out of uni, so it felt quite natural to go back to it. The difference being this time is we weren't just as sort of ideological around how the industry should be. We a bit more realism. We were a bit more experienced. We had a bit more of an idea of what we were doing, so this time around it was quite different. But I'm glad I did do it the first time, even though it was a bit of a mess, just simply because I learned a lot of things.
What was the first game that you made?
We made a game called Trap Mansion, which was like an iPad game. At that point, like iPad games were like blowing up. It was like quite like the hot thing, like the App Store game. This is like 15 years ago, where it's like those kind of mobile games were like everyone was talking about them. They were like new tech, new stuff. This is all cool. They were becoming very accessible. A lot of people were playing them, so we were jumping on and trying to make those sorts of games. But it wasn't a very good game. It was fine. It didn't sell at all.
Probably good it didn't, because you got some good learnings out of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're right in a way of like the things that you fail at, you learn more from. I think we just sort of came into it with sort of just very, very green views on the world of like, we'll just make a game, we'll make money, not considering marketing, not considering the audience, not considering if the game is actually viable. There's a lot of things we didn't do properly, but that comes with experience.
And then, I was going to talk to you about that as well. So the game that you found your fame and fortune now with Baby in Yellow. Yeah. So tell me, how did that come about then? So
that was originally a game jam. So me and Aaron, he's the co-founder of Team Terrible, we do a lot of side projects, particularly game jams.
Still do that? Yeah.
Not as much as I would have liked, just because running a studio takes up all of our time, so we definitely don't do it as much. I think we only did one game jam last year, and we were yet to do one this year. But I think Aaron's probably got close to about 40 game jams under his belt. I think I'm close to about 30-ish. But anyway, we were...
What do you like about it then? What is it keeps you coming back?
it's a really nice way of like, if you make a game, even for a small studio, you're talking 6 months to a year, like absolute minimum. Big studio, 5, 6, 7 years.
Bits.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing of you get to do a full cycle of like game development. You get the prototype, you get to implement, you get the release, you get to do post-release. You kind of do a little bit of like PR. It's just a nice way to sort of make a game from start to finish in one go. It's also a fun way to just experiment, try out ideas, not really worry too much about your feeling because there's nothing financial on the line. Like the worst that happens is you make a buggy game. Oh no, it only cost you a weekend of time. You're kind of more doing it. It's more the journey than it is the destination. But whenever we were making the Baby in Yellow, we were trying to do it to kind of make fun of a friend of ours who'd had a kid because he was complaining about, looking after a child, and the theme of the game jam. So you have a short period of time and you'll have a theme. The theme of that game jam was who is in control. So we had this idea of like, well, what if it's like a sort of like superhero baby, like kind of like Jack from The Incredibles. That's kind of funny. You could sort of have that power dynamic. And then we changed it to horror because a friend of ours was talking about this sort of like horror stuff, and we thought that's more interesting. And it was a fun game jam. We didn't expect to see it blow up, but then the next thing we knew, people were downloading the demo, or well, the game jam game, which generally aren't very good. Like you only make them in 48 hours. They're usually buggy. They're usually not that fun. The only people that usually play them are other people who have also made game jams. But this one, for some reason, content creators started picking up on it. People started downloading it. People started commenting, and we suddenly had like 2,000, 3,000 downloads of this game that, was throwaway to us ultimately. Like that's how we were treating these. Like we were never viewing these as like a viable option. So whenever that took off, it was sort of a thing of, wow, maybe this is actually a product. Maybe this is something we should like invest in. So
what did you have going on at the same time? What did that priority over?
Well, I was in Rockstar at the time. So I was working on, I probably can't say, but I was working on one of their IPs. And
is it one of the IPs that's out yet or not?
I can't say. And Rockstar are a very successful company. They're not going anywhere anytime soon, as far as I can tell. They have some of the best IPs in the world. It's a very prestigious job. Every time I talk to people, if I spoke to people and said I worked at Rockstar, everyone gets excited. So there was a lot we were kind of giving up to be like, is this going to tank our career? Like we've had an amazing opportunity here. If we step away and do something else and do it for 2 or 3 years and it fails, then we've got to go back and get jobs. Versus if we'd spent that 2 or 3 years working really hard in Rockstar, we could have ended up in a much more prestigious position. So financially, was this a smart idea? Career-wise, was this a smart idea? But ultimately, the thing that made me decide we needed to do it was, I think if we did it and failed, I could live with that. But not doing it, I probably would have stayed awake most nights thinking, what if I did give this, what would have happened? It's not
guaranteed that would work out in Rockstar either. You just don't know, right?
I mean, you're right. I think it was just the fear of, you don't get these opportunities very often. Quite often people will only ever work on one successful game. This might be mine. I'm not going to give up that opportunity, and if it ends up costing me, so be it. I think I just needed to know whether or not it'd be viable.
And what did it look like when you started seeing the downloads coming up? Like, what were you kind of feeling? How big did it get?
Oh, it was crazy. So before we quit, we saw the game spiking on mobile. So what I mean is copycats. So there was versions of the Baby in Yellow being uploaded to mobile with hundreds of thousands of downloads, like insane amounts of downloads. So we were like, well, we've done a little bit of mobile before from the first company because we were doing iPad games and stuff. So we were like, we can port this. It's a lot easier these days as well. The tools are a lot better than they were. So we put the game on mobile just to see what would happen, stuck some adverts in it, and then suddenly we were earning revenue. And at that point we were like, well, this is now profitable. We need to quit and focus entirely on this. This isn't going to be like a just in the weekends thing. This is going to be our full-time job. So yeah, that was just the sort of thing of it. It sort of went from, we had 500, 600 downloads on itch.io where we upload the Game Jam game to, wow, we've got like 10,000 downloads in mobile. I still remember the first time we hit 1 million downloads. Wow. And now we're on, I don't know the exact number. It's over 300 million, so it's a lot of downloads. Wow. But yeah, at that time.
Overwhelmingly positive on Steam.
Yes, overwhelmingly positive on Steam. Genuinely, I'm blown away by the reaction of like people engaging with it. We have a Discord community with, I can't remember the exact number, but 30,000 people on it or something like that. They send us fan art, they write theories about the game. We have content creators with like tens of millions of views of people playing our game. It's kind of surreal. It has got to the point now where some of the numbers are difficult to sort of wrap your head around. Like 300 million you could just sort of say a squillion. It's not a real number. But a friend of mine...
Squillion's real.
Oh, yeah. There's a friend of mine, and we were having a drink one evening, and he was like, let's do some napkin math. And I can't remember what number we were on for this, and the numbers probably won't add up exactly, but the general thing was you could work out how many people on the planet have played your game, like roughly 8 billion people, blah, 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 blah. And the calculation that he did at the time, which would be different now, I think it was 1 in 34 or 1 in 35 people on the planet have played the game. And that kind of blew my mind, because like 100 million is a very, very difficult number to think about, but 1 in 34 or 1 in 35, that suddenly meant something to me. I was like, well, I could picture that. Like my primary school class was like 30 kids, so that's basically that. That was quite a strange, surreal feeling. So
how do you keep it going then? What's been the...
Well, we really love the game. We really love what we're doing.
A better question, sorry. How much of your dad's input with those wee games have you managed to get into the game? Like the fun games?
I mean, I think that's just a general thing of like who I am.
Yeah.
My dad also did a lot of, so he was an artist and did a lot of screenwriting and stuff as well. So like storytelling's always a big thing. I do quite a lot of the narrative in the game. I do quite a lot of the sort of like blue sky, big picture stuff. And a lot of that's just sort of driven from like, I remember like doing stupid story games with my dad where me and my brother would pitch ideas and he would write a story for us. And it's very similar to like the sort of stuff I do now. And it seems funny looking back at that, where that's just a silly game as kids, but now is like, that's how I pay my mortgage. It's a strange thing to switch from one to the other. But yeah, it's all based on the same sort of basic ideas of like, a game is just a way to tell a story or to tell an experience and to share that experience with someone else. There's no real difference between that and like playing a role-playing game like D&D or whatever. It's all the same kind of skills.
And so do you think then you'll be a Baby in Yellow too, or do you think you just keep evolving the same game?
So we are currently in early access. The plan is to release 1.0 next year.
Right.
And after that is still a little bit up for debate. I have a couple of things that I want to do. My business partner has a couple of things that he wants to do, and I think we're still trying to figure out. I think whatever we work on next will probably be in the Baby in Yellow universe. And we've been setting up a lot of stuff to make sure that we have like scope to basically make other products in this universe.
Series?
Potentially. There's been a couple of talks about things like that.
You're talking about that amount of numbers.
Yeah. There's been a couple of things like that in the past that we've spoken about. There's a lot of possibilities for those sorts of things. My big interest is games, obviously, so I'm curious as to what we're going to be moving on to next. I would love to do something multiplayer. I could understand us doing a sequel or a spin-off. We might also spend 6 months just working on something completely different just for a palate cleanser, even if it's not necessarily something that's going to be commercially viable, just as a way for us to explore 3 or 4 other ideas. Basically taking it back to our roots of game jams, like short periods of time. We're going to make 5 or 6 different games. We're going to release them. If one of them gets traction, then that's a potential. If not, we've always got Baby in Yellow. We can move on to the sequel.
And what would you say then for people that are maybe listening to this, that maybe you 15 years ago, how do you think it's a good idea to get their games traction? Because as you know yourself, like, quite saturated the market with...
Oh, incredibly so. I think it's really, really difficult, and I don't think anyone has the sort of silver bullet answer to this. I can give my experiences. Obviously, that's not necessarily going to work for everyone, but I think it's sort of a figuring out what works for you. But the biggest thing for me, and the biggest piece of advice that I wish I had, is not to spend too much time on a singular product. With the way of the world right now, you're not making a game that has to then be printed on disc, made in a factory and shipped around the world. You can upload a game that evening onto Steam or onto itch.io. It's not hard to get a game up there. So because of that, what you should really do is get your stuff up as soon as possible. Like as soon as it's viable to be played, get it up there. People will look past a lot. People, if the game is genuinely good, people will ignore bugs, people will ignore bad art.
They'll try and help you.
Well, I mean, potentially, but the biggest thing is the community that are engaging with it. Like if you look at a game like PUBG, when it first came out, I think it broke records on how many people were playing it at one time. And when that game first came out, there was like loads of the assets were just assets that were downloaded from online. The game was buggy as hell, but the game was fun, so people looked past all that. Schedule 1, which is a game that's coming out recently that's blown up everywhere. It's not that it's unattractive looking, but the graphics are quite simplistic. It's relatively stable. It's not particularly buggy, but it's quite a simple game. But there's an element of fun there, and it's just completely blown up. I think people have a tendency to sort of like hide stuff too long, to be like, no, it's not ready, it's not ready. You just need to get out in front of people. If it is genuinely fun to play, people will engage with it.
Yeah, I've got loads of broken games. I mean, Ark Survival Evolved, I got that from day one.
Yeah.
That was a nightmare.
Loads of games like that.
You can get on it.
But if you enjoy playing
loved it.
you'll look past it. So I think that's the biggest piece of advice that I wish I'd known is getting it out early isn't a bad thing. There's a lot of fears around people of like someone stealing your idea and all this sorts of stuff. That's going to happen regardless.
That's the ecosystem now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you can't do anything. People get a variation of your game. It's like when I watch my son on Roblox sometimes and I see something that's quite good. A week later, there's a million variations of that wee game that's quite good.
There's no way you can really get around that, but getting your game out there and getting traction is the biggest thing. It's the hardest thing is to get eyes on your product or get eyes on your on the things you're working on, because it's a saturated market. You're competing with, I mean, I don't know how many games are uploaded every day to Steam, but there's quite a lot. And on the app stores, it's even worse. Like you're talking like hundreds of apps a day. Like it's mental, and most of them are garbage. Most of them are just not very good. They're never going to go anywhere. But it's tricky to be like, well, if you genuinely have something good, how do you show it? Like a really good example of this is like Among Us, where it came out and didn't do particularly well. And then around COVID, when a lot of people were inside, it suddenly just found its niche of...
The timing was good as well.
Yeah, that's it. It's like, even though it had already been out and it hadn't really done particularly well, because everyone was trapped inside and some streamers picked it up, blew up. But that was the thing, it's to get it in front of those streamers, to get it in front of the eyes of people is really, really hard. So you need to get it out there, gauge to see if it's worth working on, and then it's just a big push to be like, how do you get people to play this? How do you get people to spend time on this?
And if you think about it, right, some of the big developers, they could be in a game for 5-6 years and they've just edged all their bets on that, right? And they could either hit a sweet spot where maybe like a extraction shooter's cool, or they can whip it when it's not.
That happens all the time. It's something that I'm hoping we never get to, where we work on a product for 3 years. I've worked on products in the past that have been like this, where you work on something for 3 or 4 years, it comes out and it sells 10,000 copies. The budget was whatever, I don't know, 10 million. Cool. The entire studio has to close, because that's incredible losses, and that is a common thing. And I think unless you have maybe an IP that it already exists, like this is the third or fourth one, where people are going to buy it regardless, or maybe, people are going to buy it regardless just from the name recognition. Trying to get a new IP out there is really difficult, and it's why so many companies these days are doing reboots of old IPs or doing sequels, because it's a lot safer. You see a similar thing in film. I'm
just going to say that. Yeah, they're so frightened to do something new, they'd rather just maybe do a tried and tested.
Exactly. But I think it's just why it gives room for indies, and I think it's why the indie space is a lot more interesting now, because budgets are smaller, you can take more of a risk, there's a lot less collateral damage if it doesn't go well. So you'll generally find that some of the more interesting spins on what a game is or game mechanics all come from the indie scene, not the AAA scene. AAA scene blows away with graphics and stuff. Obviously, they're incredible. Oh yeah, absolutely insane. But a lot of the gameplay that they have is quite similar to other games out there, whereas you'll see like crazy things in the indie space, like, you know, a really good example is Papers, Please. You're literally playing someone that works as on border control. It sounds incredibly dull.
Well, the simulator market's been huge.
Yeah, it's absolutely blown up. The fact that like Lawnmower Simulator and Power Washer Simulator.
Police ones, I've got a good friend of mine that's really high up in the police, so now we've got, I'm always asking him about stuff about the police, and he's always telling me, he sent me a picture one time, I can't tell you actually, but he sent me a picture one time, probably shouldn't have, but anyway, but I think he's got Police Simulator now as well. I'm thinking I need to hook up with him and play that with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. My girlfriend, her biggest thing that she plays is anything that you can like create like furniture and stuff. It's basically the Sims, but the next level of it. So things like House Flipper and stuff, she's obsessed with, because she just loves those kinds of experiences, which again, on paper, if you said it to someone, it's like, it's a game and you renovate houses, it's just like, that sounds awful. Who do I shoot?
No, my wife would love that one.
Yeah, but there's huge markets, and I think the indie space explores those weird ideas that on paper don't always necessarily sound good, or there may be a niche. But if that niche hasn't been tapped and you're the first person to do that, it's incredibly lucrative. There's huge potential for your products if you do something like that.
And do you think AI is helping speed up the game development as well? Would it be true to say that, see Pal World, is that true that was mostly wrote in AI code, or is that just absolute nonsense?
I don't actually know much about Pal World.
Because Pal World looks like to me that you type a million good games that you liked and hit enter, and it would come to Pal World. It looks...
I mean, maybe. I
no
don't
offense to Pal World if that's true, but anyway, but you know what I mean? I wonder how much AI's got involved in game development now and coding.
I mean, I can't speak for Pal World. I don't know anyone who works on that product. I don't know a huge amount about it. Maybe. There is a lot of tricky things. There's a lot of moral things that come with like AI. It's definitely being used, and we don't use it currently in-house for like development of our games. There's definitely a certain thing of we're not quite comfortable with that, particularly on the art side. Like my background was art, and there's a certain like ethical line there that I'm not sure about.
How long will that last, do you think, with ethical?
Because no idea. I mean, that's the thing as well of, I don't know realistically, like I don't think it's going to last forever. I think that like this will eventually come for everyone's jobs, regardless if it's games or not. But at the moment right now, for us creating games, we like creating games the way that we do it. I imagine that AI is just going to become more and more and more and more integrated. I think that's just a standard thing, but there is still a lot of backlash from a lot of people who buy games and play games. It's more in the sort of hardcore markets, but there is a lot of like pushback from people who do play certain games. They'll be like, I will not play a game that has AI in it. And there's definitely a certain amount of like PR backlash you can get for engaging with AI. It's not something that we're willing to sort of really engage with at the moment, but I mean, who knows what it's going to be in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. I think the industry is probably going to change quite a lot, to be honest, just because it's such an insane tool that's being developed for like everyone to use.
I know, that's what makes me wonder if there's going to be more games and more ideas getting that extra wee boost because AI's helped them.
Quite possibly. I mean, in general, that's the way, even ignoring AI, that's the general shape of the industry now, where 20 years ago, a solo developer making a game was like incredibly difficult. You had to be a very, very talented programmer generally to be able to do something like that. Whereas these days, you have access to, like, Unreal Engine is free. That is wild. Blender is free. That's absolutely wild. You can make games, insane games, and there's some games out there that are solo dev made that are like stunning. People are using asset packs, people are using like every tool they have available.
Yeah, I see on LinkedIn, somebody from University of West of Scotland keeps on posting up some of what their students are doing.
It's insane.
Fantastic.
Yeah, looking at what students do these days makes me ashamed of the stuff that I did when I was at uni, because the tools available, the bar is now so high because there's loads of stuff that just you couldn't do by yourself. So yeah, even AI aside, just in general, it's way easier for a single person to make a game than it's ever been. And I think that's again why there's a certain level of like, we're kind of like in like sort of like an indie renaissance to me, where that's where all the cool ideas are coming from. It's more accessible than ever. AAA is struggling in a lot of ways because the industry, it goes up and goes down. It seems to be trending down at the moment. There's definitely a thing of like, this is when there's going to be a lot of cool indie games. This is whenever a studio is going to close and you're going to get these senior developers being like, let's just go make our own game. And suddenly have all the tools that used to cost hundreds of thousands of pounds for free.
None of the red tape internally.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, releasing on something like Steam, it's difficult on consoles because they're harder to get on the platform. But things like Steam and even mobile, as long as you're a relatively capable game developer, you can figure out those things. They're not hard. Again, the whole thing of PR and visibility is the harder aspect of that, but the actual making the game has like never been easier, which is incredibly cool. It allows anyone accessibility. If anyone wants to make a game, realistically they can, whereas a while ago, you need 3 or 4 people, you need a lot of very, very niche skills. Even, as you mentioned earlier, things like Roblox, anyone can make a game in Roblox, which is wild to me, like absolutely wild. Like, kids can make games. It's going to foster like budding developers an opportunity. I guarantee you there'll be people in 10, 15 years time doing podcasts like this and talking about, well, whenever I used to play Roblox when I was like 12, I used to make games for my friends. That is a way that's going to start new developers
100%.
like learning about the industry.
I always remember my little girl, she used to pretend to be a YouTube channel, you know, we'd make roasted cheese and we'd put the iPad there, welcome to our channel, right? She was maybe about 7 or 8. Now I've got my little boy who's nearly 5 and he's saying stuff like that. And I was thinking, welcome to my channel, do you know how to like and subscribe?
It's weird. It makes me laugh because I've seen that a lot with, like, although I don't have kids, friends of mine that have kids that do that sort of thing. But it just makes me laugh because I remember doing similar things when I was a kid, where you would mimic what was on TV.
Yeah.
I would mimic what the music that I listened to. I would mimic what I seen in the films. So realistically, of course, they're going to mimic the media they're watching. That's what everyone does. Like, there's just like a thing of, I remember making films when I was a kid because I watched films, so I wanted to do that. And nowadays, the idea of like all you need is a phone. Back then, you had to have a camcorder, you had to have a sound setup, you had to have a boom mic. Yeah. Like nowadays, a phone, and you can mimic what these people are doing because their setups are relatively simple. It's very crazy how accessible everything's become, and with only a small budget, you can realistically enter the market as a content creator. It's not unreasonable to do.
I want to ask you one last thing. If you have somebody out there who just finished their degree and they're looking to get in, they want to come to a place like yourselves, what do you think they should have in their arsenal to come to you to impress you? Like, obviously a degree is more one thing, but you're looking for somebody that's actually done stuff themselves to say, look, this is what I can do.
Oh, totally. And I think there's a certain element of what will impress me versus what will impress like a big AAA studio. Yeah. So if you're going to do a big AAA studio, generally they want specialists. So you'll want someone that's very, very like focused on, let's say, character art, and they'll want a big portfolio. And I'm not necessarily the best person to talk about that kind of stuff. What I'm looking for more generalists. Now, we need people to do specific roles. We need people to have their specialities. But what I'm looking for and what we foster in our studio is the idea that you can wear many hats. For a long time, I mean, I used to do the audio and our game. I don't do it anymore, luckily, because I'm not very good at it. But I want to see people that are working on their own games, their own ideas, like whether it be game jams or side projects. My big thing was, whenever I was an artist in the industry, is I didn't love making art for games because I wanted to make games, if that makes sense. Whereas to me, making art for games was like doing a small part of it. I want other people who are more like myself and my co-founder, where they're interested in the game making process and they want to be a part of that, as opposed to what you need to be in a AAA studio, where no, you need to love making art for games. And it was one of the things I always struggled with AAA, because I never loved making art for games. I loved making games itself. So for me, if you're applying to me, it's showing that, showing games you've worked on, it's showing side projects, it's showing that you have like the love of the whole process, but you're really specialized in code, you're really specialized in art, you're really specialized in whatever roles we need for a studio.
Cool. Well, listen, all the best with it, and I'm sure it's going to go bigger and bigger. I can't wait to see VR Baby in Yellow. That'd be a cool one.
That's something we have been thinking about. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well myself, if we get around to it.
Yeah, honestly, I'd love to just sit and just scribble ideas. You've probably thought of them all already, right? Right. Thank you, Greg. Take care.
Cheers.
Buddy.
Thank you very much.